Welcome in, my friends. It is season 4 finale time. I cannot believe how quickly this season has gone. It has been tremendous telling founder stories. And today's founder story, it's a special one for me because this is one I've had an eye on wanting to do for a while. And this individual actually has a very selfless marketing manager who I first approached because I just thought maybe Scott was a little too high on the list. So I shot for the marketing director, and he actually kicked me right up to the boss. So thank you to D for that. But today's season finale is exciting. If you don't know Scott and Humboldt Family Farms, by the time we're done today, you will. And if you don't follow or know about the brand, you should. And again, you will. Thank you again to everyone who's consumed the content, been doing it and supporting it. I love you for it. Most of all, Green Lane Communication, Mikey Meyer and the team, dude. Thank you so much for trusting us to sponsor this season. If you're looking to get great PR in the cannabis industry and stand out amongst the rest with a dude who knows it better than most, head over to greenlanecommunication.com to get started. That's the best marketing or PR team that I work with. I absolutely enjoy them head to toe. All right, let's get into the finale. Today, my man Scott, Humboldt Family Farms. Scott, how are you today, man?
I'm doing good, Sean. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful. As I said, I'm excited to be here. I know you're a fellow deadhead. We're going to get into that as we wrap through it. Maybe even right now, because as the show goes, we like to kick it off with the origin story, Scott. So tell us, how did you find and when did you find this wonderful plant we all love?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I was a consumer. I grew up in San Diego. So I originally found this plant in high school, through some of my older friends. And it just worked for me, man. I wasn't a huge consumer, but I used it more for that kind of sun-grown active lifestyle. I'd smoke a little bit before I went surfing or played soccer and stuff like that. And I found that that this plant was medicine. And then all the way through college, I went to Chico State. And that's where, really my first deep exposure to the Emerald Triangle cannabis culture and products came from when I was at Chico. And still surfing, I used to go, I used to drive up to Humboldt, I'd buy a pound and go surfing, and then I'd go back to Chico and I'd, dime bag them off or, eights and and so I kind of got my own smoke that way. And so that's kind of where I fell in love with Humboldt originally. And then moving up here, I had the opportunity to move up here in the early 2000s. Ended up marrying into a second-generation cannabis family. We ran a cafe up here for about 20 years, sourcing amazing peaches and tomatoes from our local farming community. And those same farmers also, they grow amazing cannabis. And so here I am, not many years later, and now we've got Humboldt Family Farms in celebration of those farmers, many of the same farmers that were supplying the cafe. And so, yeah, it's an honor to be a part of this and representing the community in that way.
Well, look, so a lot of this makes sense now, right? So I told you in the preset that I thought you were a California guy. You're a San Diego guy. Mm-hmm. It also makes a lot of sense with the recent collaboration you've done in the surf world, if I'm not mistaken, with your brand into that world. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? I found that very intriguing, and now I know the backstory to it. How does something like that come to be for you, man?
Yeah, well, Humboldt Family Farms, what it would be today, what it is without surfing. I mean, when I first came to Humboldt, I didn't know anybody up here. And I found my favorite surf break up at Camel Rock at the time. And I found the closest rental to that surf break. And my wife and now sister-in-law owned the cafe that was in Trinidad in that little town. And that's how I met her. And so that's kind of how we ended up here. I think one of the things that we're, with what we have here in California is Prop 64. And that's what basically legalized cannabis in a recreational way. We had medical cannabis since 1996 and Prop 215. But with recreational and Prop 64, I think there was all of a sudden this big influx of cultivation across the state. And I think that there was a lot of cultivation going on outdoors specifically to feed the extract market. And I think that the consumers at that time kind of were a little mistaken over the craft quality of sun-grown. And so I think what we did was we looked at sun-grown kind of as a category on the shelves, and we started looking at, well, how can we help change the mindset of some of these consumers? Because consumers, frankly, I mean, I love being outside and I like to consume cannabis and be outside. And you know what? The flowers also prefer sunshine. And so, the collaboration with Jake Howard and the Surfer team made a lot of sense, just personally, and also that team, also the history of cannabis and surfing, and the stories that were told to me when I first was introduced to them on the culture of surfing and the way that the hash market used to move around the world in the surfing community was like blew my mind. And so we decided to do a collab just essentially to celebrate the sun-grown lifestyle, which included not just cannabis but also surfing. And now we've got a couple of other exciting things coming. You would probably have to agree, right? Like sun-grown is there's a lifestyle to it, right? Like there's nothing when you go outside after a rain and the sun shines on your face. That feeling, right? Like there's something.
No, I agree with you, man. I have my post that I do on Fridays for social media is called Get Outside Friday. Be kind and get outside, because at the end of the day, I run an organization. I've been running it now for 13 years, and you got to find a way to do more than that, than whatever it is that you do for a living. You have to find a way to enjoy what's around us, and like the idea of like rise and grind lifestyle is about the most unattractive terminology I think I could ever hear in my life. As a matter of fact, I just circled again, sun-grown lifestyle, and I'm going to probably use it because I really like it. And it reminds me of something else I wanted to ask you, which is the debate, or I guess it's not a debate. I don't know. The difference between sun-grown outside cannabis and cannabis that's grown in a controlled environment inside of a building is different. Why and how, Scott?
Indoor is certainly easier to regulate because you've got it in a box, right? And it's also easier to manage from whether it's you're dialing in on timers and light timing and all those types of things. But nothing can replicate the sun. And we see that specifically there's a study in Columbia University now looking at the terpene percentages, right? And we find that full-term sun-grown cannabis provides significantly higher terpenes. And I think, when you look at the energy or the effect that it has on people, it creates really positive experiences from what I've seen. And this is going back many, many years back before all this testing thing, right? Like before testing, everything, like we didn't have anything to, we were breeding and we were creating strains for experiences, not for THC content. And so a lot of those strains had lower THC, but high terpenes, and even some of them had a lot of CBD blends. And so when you ask me, really what the difference is, I think there's a market for both. I don't ever, talk trash on the indoor cycle. There's definitely certain regulatory frameworks. We're trying to normalize this plant, and there are certain states and jurisdictions that they have only indoor ordinances. And frankly, some of those places, like outdoor isn't an option because your seasons are so short. They don't, and things like that. So I think that, I'm fortunate that I live in an area that sun-grown and that it just grows amazingly well in all of our different appellations here in Humboldt County.
Yeah, it is. It is about that too. And we talk about it here. Like I live in a prohibition state of Wisconsin, but we have hemp, and some of the hemp farmers talk about, how great the soil is here, why some of them came here from other places. But this season really has been bumming them out because it doesn't get long enough. It cold snaps. It does this. It does that. And those are kind of that adjustment that I know I've read you talk about. But you also recently had a post where you were basically like, look, I'm a farmer. I went on a weekend vacation with my family and my plants didn't notice. And I thought to myself, I really took it back to my own life. And I thought to myself, if I took a vacation, my computer wouldn't know I was gone, right? My phone wouldn't know that I was gone. And it really kind of hit me, man. How are you balancing the founder lifestyle in an industry that is as needy, I think is a nice way to say it for most, that to be able to have both a life and grow a business, man, from a founder perspective, tell us how you're doing that.
Yeah. I think it's you do have to find it's critically important to find balance. And I think that turning off your device and just checking out, it doesn't mean that you need to necessarily go completely off the grid, but even at your house, just turn off your device and just have downtime with family, friends, or just doing something that you love to do. I mean, going back to surfing, right? Like I go out and I surf and it's like, I don't have my device with me, so I can completely check out, focus in the moment. And I think that what's interesting is like my team notices the positive energy that I bring back to the team and everything that we're trying to create and do and the vision. It's much clearer when I come back from one of those breaks. And so I think like when you kind of look at, what's best for not just you personally, because when you're in good health and you're in, in a healthy state of mind, spiritually, physically, emotionally, like you're a better asset to the entire team. And I think that's why it's so critically important. And, as a friend of mine, Craig Fox, reminded me of that recently on one of his posts, which motivated me to do that post of like checking out is critically important to the big game, especially from a founder standpoint, because it is easy because, I want to be connected to every single little thing, but it's impossible. And so to be able to give that up for a little bit of period of time is incredibly refreshing.
Yeah, and surrounding yourself with good people, right? And again, I've only met Dee from your team, but as someone that I've been watching and following to begin with, someone who really understands brand marketing, someone who understands being out in front. And when those kind of things happen, you see it in an emerging industry like cannabis, right? I don't think people give how infantile this industry is enough credit. Like I get it. There's legacy guys that have been around for doing this 30 years, but legally, the most you've been doing it's a decade legally. And it's new, emerging. It's going through that. What advice do you have right now, man, for founders trying to find their way through this in the space where they're growing and they're trying to do that? Because you've been doing it successfully. Give me a piece of advice you have for people trying to do it right now who might be struggling.
Yeah, I think for me, I really try to focus on the people that feed you, like working with people that kind of feed your energy and are kind and are like-minded. I think it's funny because I kind of have my spidey senses sometimes. And when you try to force things to happen, because sometimes, things as they work out over time are never exactly the way that you think. But a lot of times, like by putting out good energy and being a really good business partner, especially in the cannabis industry, is critically important right now. Historically, there's been a real kind of hustle mindset. And I think that as we are normalizing it and becoming more business savvy, I believe it's incredibly important to have a positive attitude towards the outlook. I mean, there's a lot of challenges in the cannabis industry, as there are in many industries. But I think to be solution-oriented versus complaint-oriented, I think is something that I really try to strive with for my team. And I think that keeps us with a positive mindset and mentality, and we're able to move forward versus being held up and complaining about things that we no longer have control over. And so I think that's where you're creating solutions, you're creating future opportunities versus dwelling on the past.
My goodness, founders, if you were not listening to the last minute and 10 seconds, I suggest you rewind it because that is some serious knowledge dropping. I have circled a few things. Obviously, I love the idea of complaining versus solutions. I tell my team that all the time. You got something you want to bring me that's going to make us better? Let's do it. You want to bitch about something, run outside, yell it out to the earth, come back inside. Like I don't need it. We don't need it. But this goes back to a bigger discussion that I want to have. You're a California guy. You've said the word energy probably, 7 times already. I've circled it a bunch of times. When I'm new to energy, okay, Scott, I'm not going to lie to you. So like my wife, she over the last couple of years, she's been getting into Reiki. She's been getting very good at it, getting a lot of people in her space, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so she's like, of course, I'm part of the test, right? This girl's trying to be a master of 100 hours or something. So I'm the test guy. There's something here, right? There's something bigger than me. I'm not a religious kid, but there's something bigger than me. When you say energy, man, what do you mean? What does that mean to you when you say that?
Well, it's like music, right? I mean, let's go back to the Dead. Like you get a certain vibe or a certain feeling when you listen to certain types of music that motivates you, encourage you. Like that's energy, right? Yeah. And so it's taking the energy of the music. And I think that people and nature and everything has that energy, right? And so I think it's what what encourages you, what creates positive vibrations for you in all parts of life. And not everything has it, but it's recognizing the positive energy from the negative energy. And I think that in business, focusing on that positive energy is what moves things forward. And so, that's the easiest, I guess, explanation I can give to you, Sean, is the music example. Some music, and like when you're driving in a car and you listen to some music and all of a sudden you're like kind of road raging out. You're like, I need to change the music. Right. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're like on chill mode and you're like, okay, cool. Now I'm just bobbing and weaving down the road. Right. Like,
no, it's totally true. It's totally true. Since I've started down this road with my wife and going through it, I'm in environments where I walk into a meeting and you're like, oh boy, this is not going to be fun. Like this has not had the greatest energy. You know what I mean? Or like we were at a family event. One of our family members is a real pain in the ass. As soon as they walked through the door, I could feel it. Like he just sucked the energy out of the room. I was like, well, this is going to suck. Like this is no good. So there's really something to that. And from a founder perspective, I've got some of my real bro founder buddies who are like, oh, that's woo woo. It's like, yeah, whatever you want to call it. Since I've started trying to dial it in, it's changed my life and it's changed the way I run my organization. To say I care less is the wrong terminology. I put less emphasis on everything having to be perfection. I finally have accepted that perfection is absolute and utter bullshit, and it's made me feel better. So that's how I'm trying to use the energy, Scott. So thank you for saying it, because I don't think enough founders talk about it.
My pleasure. Mm-hmm.
All right. So there's a few more things that I need to get into with you. And we call this segment at the end of the show the hot hits. Okay. The hot hits. We're going to get into them early because I've got a lot more on my sheet than I normally do. And I want some industry opinions from a man who lives it every day. All right.
Sure.
Before we do that, don't forget, my friends, Hot Hits brought to you by our friends at Green Lane Communication. You want bold media placement, thought leadership that turns heads, stand out amongst the crowd? Head over to greenlanecommunication.com. Get started with the best PR agency in all of cannabis. All right, here are the hot hits. So I'm a prohibition state kid, as I mentioned, and I have to go to other states to do, my purchasing. And now I'm surrounded by them, which is so exciting. I'm getting seeds, Scott, in my weed. What's the deal, man? Is this okay? Is this something I should bitch about? Tell me and give me direction on this topic.
Well, I would say if they're feminized seeds, that's a great thing. If your flower is completely seeded, that's a problem. If you get one or two or three seeds here and there, put them in the ground next season, man. And I mean, okay. I would love nothing more than for people to be growing this magical plant all around the world, which they are. But what's interesting is, the same mother plant, we've got hemp and we've got cannabis, right? Like it's a very interesting way in which this plant is now becoming more and more normalized. And I think that, it's not I don't see it as like these two sides of hemp against cannabis. It's like, no, we're all celebrating this plant. And so if you're in a state that doesn't have access, whether it's recreational or medicinal cannabis, but you have access to hemp, it's the same plant, right? I mean, and regulatory wise, I think that we're going to start seeing some loosening up on the cannabis side and some tightening up on the hemp. And eventually we'll find this middle ground where everyone has access to this plant.
Same plant. And again, it should be our right as citizens to grow our own plants, period.
100%.
Story, right? Full stop.
It's a plant. Yes, absolutely.
It's just a plant, right? In that way. And it's more than that. It's medically important. All right. So seeds in my weed is okay if they're feminized. I'm only going to know that if I put them in the ground though, right, Scott? There's not some sort of test I can run previous.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, if it's typically that's how you know. If it's one or two seeds, typically would be feminized. But yeah.
All right, I'll save them.
Put them on the ground and find out.
I'm getting mad about it. I'm like, look, man, I dealt with beans back in the 90s when I was a legacy distributor. I don't deal in that anymore, but you're telling me it might be okay. So I'm not going to go crazy just yet.
Yeah.
You kind of already talked about a little bit the hemp versus cannabis debate and how it is just one plant. You talked about some changes you see coming. The scheduling debate, Scott. Where does Scott find himself when it comes to the scheduling of the rescheduling of the descheduling?
Descheduling, 100%. I think that's what's best for the normalization of this plan is complete descheduling of this plan. There will still be regulatory controls, but it'll give us much better access on a federal level to get this plant out to the people, in more of a natural path way versus, in a medicinal pharmaceutical way. I think Schedule 3 is still a way in which it's being more normalized, but my fear is that people will lose access because it will go into specific channels. And if I could wave my magic wand, it would be complete descheduling of this plan.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I concern myself with the obvious opportunity of that in current administration or government setup. I see it more in the current setup as going to to a Schedule 3 than a deschedule to satisfy certain parts of all of these other parts of the people who will have an opinion here. Scott, have you heard about what's happening out in Massachusetts about trying to roll back adult use cannabis? Are you familiar with this story?
It's hard to keep on top of regulations across the entire U.S., but I have read a little bit about it, and I honestly don't know enough about it to have an opinion.
Yeah, man, I've been doing my research, and it's just it seems to be one kind of sect, within a larger scale trying to do something. Do you ever run into regulatory, are you in the regulatory debates and questions about what's going on in California? Is that a part of you being a founder and being involved? Do you have the time for that, Scott?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely keep a pulse on policy. I currently sit as the chair of the Cannabis Advisory Committee to the Department of Cannabis Control for the state. We have, sometimes monthly, usually quarterly meetings where we review proposed regulations. So I am heavily involved on, providing feedback and solution-oriented feedback on how we can create better regulations for our industry.
Well, my goodness, that is what I like to hear. A board of people made up of people who have a clue about what they're on a board for is so foreign in the world I live in tech and automotive. To hear that is wonderfully makes me smile. So with that in mind, though, I always wonder why, when states come on board, why do they feel they have to reinvent the wheel, right? Why not go to a successful model, California, whatever, blah, 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 Colorado, wherever. Scott, from your perspective, because you're intertwined, you know states' feelings, states' reasoning. Is it all political why they come in differently and have to appease certain things? Or is it because they think they can accomplish something different? Well, what is your take on why there's not just hey, if you're getting into legal cannabis, this is the way it works?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know why it's so different. We see some markets that are more successful in the supply chains than others. And a lot of that is attributed to certain types of regulatory frameworks that they've created. I think, the regulation of cannabis is still so new, right? And so it's not something that happens overnight. And so I think that, we integrated Proposition 64 with a vote by the people. And now there are some things we can change with regulatory changes. Some things have to go back to the vote of the people. And that's insanely expensive to get something passed to change such a large regulatory framework in the state. And so I think people are trying to improve on it. But like I said, I think that overall, what I'm seeing is more and more states coming on board with some form of access to either cannabis or hemp. And it's all a part of the bigger picture, which is the normalization of this plant that was, under prohibition for a lot of false pretenses, right? I mean, people aren't dying like they are with alcohol and tobacco with cannabis. We would know that by now. But now there is a power struggle on whether this is a limited license regulatory framework, or is it going to be open licensing? Are we going to limit to 1 acre? Or are we going to let it roll and be able to stack licenses? I mean, so I think we're all learning as we go, and it'll be interesting to see how the federal government decides to incorporate states' rights with this plant as it becomes more of a structure, because the reality is everybody wants it, right? Pharmaceutical industry, the banking industry, right? Like the alcohol industry, like everyone, tobacco, like everyone wants access to this plant. They're just trying to figure out like, how do we rein it in?
Right. And how do we get, again, there's a lot of different people and factors that go into that. And you talk about it. My wife and I were on the front lines of the medical scene of Colorado, 2004, 2005, 2006. And it was wild. That's the Wild West, right? Like you didn't, I learned how to grow from a buddy of mine. And so then we started taking stuff to dispensaries and being like, here we go. And they were selling it, but it was under medical. And we weren't doctors. We weren't growing like that. It wasn't like that, but it was being, put together. And that's how you got into it. I'll take anything I can get. The state of Wisconsin, now you hear me say that, state of Wisconsin, you can take your ideas and shove them down the toilet. This idea of state-run dispensaries that you grow the weed, you guys can't even run the DMV. So do me a favor, stay out of the cannabis business, all right? But with that in mind, Scott, when you look at overarching how many businesses are involved in trying to be solutions with states because you are on a board, and how many of them are just coming to you and bitching from a 50-50 standpoint? What do you find from businesses in the world today in California about that sort of trend?
I don't know, man. That's a good question. I feel like I try to create working relationship with those that are providing solutions, because that's how industry moves forward, right? There are a lot of people that get a lot of attention by banging their, standing on the soapbox and banging their fist, and that's how issues come up, right? Like that's how you rise some of those issues to the awareness of the people that are able to make changes. But again, I think, the California market's been tough, man. We've lost a lot of small farms up here. The cost of regulatory compliance is through the roof, and I think that there are some changes happening that will hopefully help that. It's not going to happen overnight. I always have like that, patience. We talk about patience a lot, right? Because there are a lot of times where you just got to take a deep breath and go, okay, like, how are we going to move forward with this? And it's hard to see friends and other businesses that you like and support and good people that aren't able to make it. But in business, in any industry, not everybody makes it. I mean, we were in the restaurant business for 20 years. I mean, the majority of restaurants go out of business in the first couple of years. I mean,
I say it about my own organization that, like, look, we started this 12 years ago. This will be our best year ever, but next year it could be over. So what I suggest to people is just to, always hunker down, always be ready for that. And because, the stress of failure comes on people differently. And I think that it's not failure. If this thing ended for me tomorrow after 12 years, total success, high five, what's next? That's how I look at it. And I think anytime anyone takes a chance, in cannabis as well, you got to give them, the kudos for taking a chance. But I will say, hearing your story, hearing the story of Lauren Carpenter, who I know you know very well, it really speaks to the chances that you guys have taken and invested in that state, in this industry. And it's something you should be applauded for, man, because it is not easy and it is expensive. Yet it looks like brands like yours, Embark, it seems like there's still a way to grow and run businesses if all things align. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And you nailed it. I mean, Embark is a great partner of ours. They're incredible operators. They run a very professional business, as do many other retailers and farms and everything else. But that's a really good example of one partnership that we have that has been very fruitful for all parties involved, starting with the farmers all the way through the supply chain. Being transparent about our supply chain partners and the partners that we're working with is something that is really rewarding for us.
And it should be. And that's what I like about it. I think people hear the Humboldt Family Farms and they think Scott's got 600 acres out behind you there. And he's just, him and his team are just growing all this cannabis. That is not the case.
No,
Could you give us a little transparent look at what Humboldt Family Farms actually is, Scott, from that perspective?
Sure. No, well, we're a collaboration of farmers. And so, I do have a family farm, but it's less than 5,000 square feet. I mean, it's a very small farm. We do everything start to finish within my family. But we coordinate bringing products in from now, I think 6 or 7 farms now that we bring in from their farms into our production facility where it's all packaged and tested. And then we, use a distributor in the state called Cannabis, which is another fantastic partner of ours, to get it out to the retailers. And so, it's kind of like, well, back to the cafe reference, right? Like we were sourcing these tomatoes and peaches in order to put them on a menu. And we tell you who the farmers of those things are. And now it's a very similar model where we take Humboldt Family Farms as this platform or a menu, and we put the farmers' names on it. So the farmers are stoked because then they want to give us their best product, right? We also, the other thing that we do is we pay them on a COA, because as soon as it passes testing, their job is done. It's now my team's responsibility to get it through the last mile supply chain. And so the farmers are also, they love working with us because we pay them more than a fair price for the product, and they get paid on a COA, and so that they can focus on farming and not trying to create this competitive brand on the market. And so that type of collaboration has been incredibly successful for us.
It's a cannabis co-op, right? I mean, I love this. I love everything about this. And I do the same thing with my company. There's little guys that are smaller than us that want to get out there, but they don't have a way out to the route. So we bring them through our route and we give them that platform and we give them that chance. And it means the world to me to be able to see people use our platform to get themselves somewhere else. I work because I love it. I'm fortunate I don't have to. I work because I love it. And I think finding what you love to do is important. Scott, you obviously love what you do. Is there ever a moment where you wake up and you think, how the hell did this happen?
Almost every day. Yeah, no, it is. It's I've got an incredible team around me, and I think that is another component that is so important, is to work with people that support the vision, I guess. And the vision can change, but people that are able to bob and weave with you and understand opportunities and take risks. Calculated conservative risks is what I like to call them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mornings I wake up, a lot of times in the middle of the night thinking about things that I may have forgotten or something like that. But yeah, I mean, that's business. That's being a founder, right? I think everybody does it. We did it when we had our cafe, and in all parts of life. This happens to be Humboldt Family Farms and the cannabis industry, so it's just a little bit different.
I love it, man. I love it. All right, let's wrap it up with the last 2 hot hits. I told you I had a long list. All right.
Yeah.
So this is a personal test of mine. So I am a huge Grateful Dead fan. I missed the Grateful Dead's last show in Chicago by 1 hour. My ride came through. I couldn't get off work. They weren't stopping. So I missed the final show in Chicago. So I have not ever technically seen a Dead show. I saw a lot of iterations afterwards, etc. Mm-hmm. So this is my own sort of like test here. I got to find out, Scott, what is your favorite era of the Grateful Dead? If we look at 60s to 70s, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, where am I going to find Scott in this as his favorite era of Grateful Dead music?
Well, the early 90s, that was my experience. I fell in love with the Grateful Dead when I was at Chico, and we were making road trips down to the city, and we'd see, Jerry and those guys. They play at the Warfield, and they do multiple nights in a row. And so Oakland Coliseum was my first show at New Year's in 1991, and man, I've loved their music ever since. I went, after Jerry passed, I went for a long time. I didn't see a lot of the iterations. Now, I was in San Diego. I wasn't really traveling to see shows, variety of different reasons. I was doing a lot of outdoor. I was doing a lot of long distance hiking, Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, some of the Continental Divide Trail, and so I was doing that. But I was listening to their music the whole time. And then a friend of mine, wanted to go to the Gorge, and they were playing up at the Gorge. So we went and saw them at the Gorge. I'd never been to the Gorge before, and it absolutely blew my mind. And so it totally brought me full circle back into the energy. I ended up going to the Sphere, and of course, most recently at their 60th in Golden Gate Park, which was a phenomenal experience. First ever licensed sales of cannabis on site and consumption, which was it was a huge honor for us to be able to be asked to help coordinate that experience. We brought Drum Circle with Drum Strong, which is one of the foundations that Mickey Hart supports. We did a fun collaborative project with Mickey Hart at the Haight Street Art Center. And I was able to bring a lot of the farmers from Humboldt down to the event because they were all had different and similar experiences with the dead. And to bring them down for that experience kind of as a family, which is what, to me, the Grateful Dead means, is family. And it was an incredible experience for all of us.
I have nothing else to add to that. I absolutely love it. I was actually at the first set of shows. They did it here at Alpine Valley Further Fest after Jerry died, the first time they all came back. And it was an amazing, I get goosebumps even retelling the story. But we had our mushroom omelets out there at 9 a.m. out in the lot. The whole day started like 11, and we walk in at 11, and it starts to get really gray outside. People get a little worried, little rain happens. Then all of a sudden, right as the Dead start their set, gigantic rainbow comes up over the top of Alpine Valley, and the whole place just went nuts. The music hadn't even really gotten going. The whole place was going crazy, and it was one of those things. You talk about energy, talk about vibes. That was the closest one for me. And then I went to a bunch of the, whatever Phil was doing or wherever they were in Chicago. Like, we made it our business to go see that. But you have kind of confirmed my ultimate thing, which is if I ask people who have been to Grateful Dead shows, their favorite era of the Grateful Dead, it is inevitably the time that they saw them. And that makes total sense. And as a kid who didn't, I'm into like 60s and 70s, like the raw, era of the Dead, I like to call it. But I only find that with people who haven't seen and haven't experienced this whole thing. So it makes so much sense when you say it, man. I absolutely. And that event you guys did, so cool. The fat nugs down there with the faces of cannabis. I mean, it was just embarked with these gigantic bags they have in that whole bit. I just love it. I love the opportunity everyone puts out. All right, last question. What's the future for Humboldt Farms, man? For Humboldt Family Farms? What's next? What can you share with us about what's next for you and the team?
Yeah, well, harvest. I mean, that's what's happening, man. And I mean, it's like we had our first rain a couple of days ago, and that always like changes things at the farm. Branches start breaking, and so yeah, we're starting to harvest some of our early strains. We're taking down starting this week over at Nick's farm at Full Moon Farms. Amy, some of her strains are a little bit longer. We'll be running some fresh frozen for her, but yeah, man, we're like knee deep in harvest starting this next week. So it's a great, beautiful time to celebrate. It's what we do. Why we do what we do is, to see the fruits of all of our labor come together over the entire season. And we've got some exciting strains, some pheno hunts, and things that we're coming down that we're super excited to share with the people. And then we got another fun collaboration that's happening this winter that you'll have to follow us on Instagram at Humboldt Family Farms, and you can check that out here. We'll be announcing that probably in the next month or two.
Awesome. Well, man, we look forward to it. Scott, you've been absolutely great with your time and sharing your information and your story with us. It's meant a lot, man. Thanks a lot for doing it.
I appreciate it, Sean. It's nice chatting with you, man.
You are great. Everyone, thank you so much for all the love and support for Season 4 Cannabiz Conversations Podcast. I can't believe it. We're getting asked about a Season 5. We're probably going to do it. I don't know when. It will not be this year. I have my hands full the rest of this year. We've already done 2 seasons this year. So thank you all for the support. Thank you again to Green Lane Communication, Mikey Meyer and the team. You've been phenomenal partners. And if you're looking for a phenomenal partner in the PR world to help you stand out above the rest, go to greenlanecommunication.com to find out more. Scott, again, man, thank you so much. If I ever make my way to that end of the world, you'll be the first guy I reach out to, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're always welcome. Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Everybody, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your year. And remember, the goal of this show is to remove the stigma and uplift the plant to its rightful place in society. Thank you all for helping. Thank you all for supporting. And we'll see you again next time.
All right.